remember what year, around what time it was when they moved it from the airport to the Ocotillo?
Oh,
Are we talking like the 60s or the 70s?
no, I think it was in the 70s.
Everything going all right there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the coffee pot over there.
Okay.
Are you getting ready to change kind of like topics?
Yes.
Can you move? Okay, cool. Can you come closer to me? Yeah, right there.
There's
That
so
airplane.
many little parts to your story. I'm trying to.
I know.
I want to get little bits of it here and there. I want to talk about the flying farmers because that's just something that we don't have much documentation on at the museum, and it's definitely a part of the story that we want to tell with the airport. So what I'd like for you to do now is to tell me how it was that you got involved in the flying farmers. How did you find out about the flying farmers, and how did you get involved in it, and when?
Well, I think through the snaps and Norris Enlow, and then Max and Carolyn Snap, and Don and I, we used to run around together all the time. And Max and Dawn learned to fly about the same time, and Carolyn and I learned to fly about the same time. So we just started going to the conventions. I mean, we were farmers, and that was the thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the flying farmers. What's the purpose of the organization, or at that time when you started, why would you join the flying farmers?
Well, we would take a trip in the summer to a different state, and we just had a convention that everybody saw. Everybody was a farmer, but I remember Mr. Piper himself, Piper Aviation, Mr. Piper himself. They came to me and said, "Ruth, we want you to give Mr. Piper a kiss when he walks in." And I thought, a kiss Mr. Piper? I was kind of embarrassed. But anyhow, he walks in, and so I went over and I kissed him on the forehead. I wasn't going to kiss him on the lips. I was so embarrassed. But I kissed him on the forehead and gave him a big hug. And that was Mr. Piper himself. Mm-hmm. And then another year we had Will Rogers Jr. and how entertaining he was. And so we had great entertainment. And
So
then one year our Arizona group put on a real cute program where they had their bellies showing the men, and they had hats on, and they did a dance, and it looked funny because they had faces built on their stomach and all that kind of stuff. But we always had fun. But the thing that I enjoyed about the flying farmers were the wonderful people that we met. People from Canada, and one thing that stands out in my mind was a queen was crowned, and I remember her name was Christopherson, and I thought she was so cute and had a beautiful red and white dress on, and I just thought, oh, she's so pretty. Well, Johnny built a home up at Overgard, a cabin, and the people that lived, they built a cabin right behind, on the side, more on the side of him. We had a luncheon up there one day, and she introduced herself as Christopherson. And I said, oh, the only Christopherson I knew was a flying farmer queen. And she started laughing. I told her which convention, I can't remember now. I think it was, I don't know if it was South Dakota, or I can't remember which one. But anyhow, she said, that was me. And I thought, oh, you had a red and white dress on? And she said, yes. I said, I just thought you were the prettiest queen. And, I just met friends like that every once in a while I still run into them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And great people.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then I've always been so proud of my own family and the things that they've accomplished and done. So,
Who are some of the other Chandler area families or farmers who were part of the Flying Farmers?
Nora Sinlow and the Snaps and the Sossamans and the Knoxes and
Was Lamoureux, were they
who?
the Dave Lamoureux?
No, I don't think Dave was, he was before the Flying Farmers.
Okay.
As far as I remember, he was not a Flying Farmer.
Okay. And so, did most of these families that you're naming, did they keep their airplanes like on their farm? Did they use the airport?
Most of them were on the farms. And when I say Sossman, we had Jack and Faye, and then Sue and Jamie, the son.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they always had a lot of prizes and drawings, and I tell you, my husband would win that drawing at every convention. He brought home punch bowls, he brought guns, all kinds of gifts that he won at drawings. And Barbara Knox and I just the other day were laughing at how much stuff he won at the Flying Farmer conventions. He was the luckiest guy.
Or it was rigged?
Oh yes, and there was Reed Riggs and Irene.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and
Were there any-
Pattersons, the Pattersons.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Were like the Finleys or any of those individuals?
I remember Finley's in rodeo, but not in flying.
Okay.
They might have been at one time.
And once your family moved into Chandler in 1959, how did you continue to use your plane, your personal plane?
We had a farm in Maricopa, so Don would fly down there every day. We still had the little Black Plymouth car, and he'd drive that out to the plane. And then we started farming in rural Arizona. So he would fly from rural Arizona home, and that went on. He was down there almost every day too. And let's see, and about the Black Plymouth car, he took that down and we left it below the bank at the old prison in Florence, or Yuma. If you remember where the prison was, well, there was a cliff behind there, and they had a landing strip.
Mm.
And we left our car underneath that prison at that landing strip. I don't know who else landed on there. I never saw anybody, ever. But we had this car, and Don had hauled some grain from Chandler, Maricopa to Yuma, or to Roll, where our farm was. And then he took the car on in to Yuma. Well, one time we had the kids and we were going to stay in Yuma for the weekend, and we lifted the trunk of that car to put our stuff in there, and we had grain growing about 6 inches in there. It got so much dust from that Yuma, but so Don sold it after that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Another thing that I was proud of is, do you remember John Simonic? He was the principal of Chandler High School. Well, he had a son, John. So my John got him to learn to fly. So both of them flew, and they would take their dates. They would take their dates in high school and fly over to the Scottsdale Airport. And I don't know if the mothers of the dates knew that or not, but that's what they'd do. So then at the end of the year, in the annual, came out a page, "Come fly with us, John and John." And so that's in the annual of when Johnny graduated. 70, let's see. I don't know, 74 or 75, he graduated. It's in that annual.
Okay.
But I was always kind of proud of that too. And before Mr. Samani died, I'd run into him at Bashes at Sun Lakes, where we both lived. And he would say, "I'm so proud of our boys. How's your John?" And I'd say, "How's your John?"
Mm-hmm.
And we'd stand there and visit. And that's some more friends you meet. You know, you just met so many people that through flying and
Yeah. How, what would you say would be the connection, the most important connection between the Chandler Airport and the farming community in Chandler? Like, why was that airport important to Chandler and the farming community?
well, I guess the most important thing was we all learned to fly out of there. Thanks to Tug Walks and John Hewlett, and then Bob Copeland came in, and then Aero Aviation, and now Walk Up. But you know, by having that airport, it helped build the city of Chandler because important people flew in there. I remember out at Aero one time, one famous movie star, I was trying to think of his name, but he flew in and gassed up. And then people, you know, flew in to check the city out and the land, and, you know, just look at it today. Something must have been very special about it because it amazes me when I see what's happened to that Chandler Airport.
Okay.
There's no way that I can even learn all the people that have airplanes out there now. You know, Chandler's just grown so much, but how fun it was when it was small.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about your rodeo days. And I know you have quite a number of years being involved in rodeo. And why don't you tell me, how did you get started in rodeo?
Well, I've always rode horses all my life. And my husband started roping. So I bought a horse, and he just turned out to be such a fabulous horse. And I went to a rodeo in Prescott, and I think my husband Don was roping in that. So when the barrel race come up, I thought, I can do that. So then I bought a $400 horse, black horse, and I started him out, and he just caught on so fast, and we roped on him, and I'd ride him on the barrels. And in fact, my first barrel race was out at the Chandler Arena there at the airport, and I won the barrels. And then I thought, oh, he's so good, so I took him over to the Coliseum and entered him in a race over there. And out of 26 horses, we come in third. And I said, I'm going professional. So, and Don backed me, and he took me to a lot of the rodeos, and then he roped in a lot of them, and some of them he didn't, some of them he did, but I just, you know, kept right on going.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I was leading the state, and I had been to Vegas, and I run with the top girls in the nation there, I come in 6th out of 15 of the top girls in the nation. And I was just, my horse was just hooked behind. We had the Hell Horse and Stock Trailer business. So my horse was just hooked in a little single horse behind a big semi full of horse trailers. So we had to leave and come home. And then I went to the rodeo in a few weeks up at Prescott. And Dale Smith come up and handed me a check. And I said, what's this for? And he said, well, you got 6 up there with them top girls in the nation. And I felt so good to think that this black horse, I knew he had made a good run. But, but I knew after running in the Coliseum I was gonna go professional, because I knew he could do it. And I ran him for a couple of years, and then he got kicked. And I will have to say, I think it's one of the saddest days of my whole life. I was loaded, I had been to the Pro-Am the year before in Vegas, and Pam, that's where I met Pam Martin, who became Mrs. Pam Earnhardt. And she come over and she said, you know, you're gonna win this whole thing. And I said, well, I hope so. And then they selected a best dressed, and I won that. And they had a pole bending deal, and I won that, and several events, and I won, really I won all of them. No, I won second on that, and I was 2/800ths of 1 second on 8 runs at a Pro-Am. And I was always happy with his performance. And I was loaded the second year to go up. My mother made me a beautiful outfit. My horse was running fantastic. I went out to the corral and I was hooked on the trailer and ready to go. And my horse couldn't even walk. He had been kicked. And through a fence that we're gonna fix tomorrow. And I just never did get over it, because I know, and I'm not bragging, but I know that I could have won. I could have been at the national finals that year. I know I could have.
What year was that?
I started in 65, 66, 67. Probably about 67 or 8, I'm not sure. I'd have to check on that. But then I took the horse over before that, I was with the Quadrille team, and oh, he was such a great leader in that. And so then after that, I had to start trying this horse and trying that horse. But even before that, I took him to the Parada del Sol. And I run that afternoon. This is how I joined the pros. I ran that afternoon, and I did good. And then that night I ran, and I was almost ready to make my run, and somebody come up, one of the girls, and said, Ruth, you can't run here. I said, why? And, well, you don't belong to the WPRA. And I said, well, I'm running on a local. You can run on a local within 50 miles. I said, I'm running on a local. And they said, oh, well, if you want points or anything, you've got to join them. And so my husband took off and ran up in the box, and found Edith Conley, who was the secretary of the National Girls, and signed me up. And I made my run, and I won that night. Mm-hmm. Thank God he went up and signed me in just 20 minutes before my run. And so, and I thought that was one of the happiest moments. I thought it couldn't be any nicer to win Madison Square Garden. I was just so happy the way my horse ran. And so I remember Dale Smith walked up to my husband at church the next morning and said, well, Don, are you ready to go down the road rodeoing? And Don said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, you better get ready, because Ruth's going. And I was going, but then my horse got kicked.
Mm-hmm. What was your horse's name?
Lunt's Tomahawk.
Lunt's?
Uh-huh.
Tomahawk?
Garth Lunt from Safford raised him. And then I got him when he was, I think, 3 years old.
Okay.
I had 3 good years on him, and then that happened, so.
Why don't you, for people who might be looking at this interview in the future, may not know a lot about rodeo and the different kinds of events that are in rodeo. So maybe tell me a little bit about that as someone who maybe doesn't know that much about rodeo and how everything is structured and the types of events that women can do or could do at that time when you were competing in rodeo.
Well, you know, even since I've been in rodeo has really changed. I mean, we used to enter with all meat, and then it got to be where guys would buy airplanes and they'd fly maybe 3 or 4 rodeos a weekend. And that's when it started changing. And then the money started changing. I wish they'd have paid that kind of money when I was in it. But the money started changing, and there's just so many new changes now in rodeo. I mean, even the pros will tell you that changing that's going on in the rodeo now.
Mm-hmm. So in the 60s when you started, what kind of events were you doing?
The barrel race, and then we'd meet and have ropings. And I roped with the pros, but it wasn't a rodeo. It would just be a roping, like the Billboard roping in Scottsdale, or some of the ropings in Scottsdale, or Casa Grande. Casa Grande had a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I barrel raced and roped down here too. My Bobby rodeoed a little bit. Donnie and Johnny. Donnie was interested in cars and motors. Johnny was all airplanes and working. And so, and Terry, I had her in queen contest when she was real little. And then when she got to be a mind of her own, you might say, teenager, then she started going to some of the contests. And then I asked her if she'd like to enter the Miss Arizona for high schools. And that contest was held in Tucson, way out east of Tucson. And their scores had to be posted. This is why I'm so proud of her at that time. Their scores had to be posted, their writing, their speech. Well, there were about 5 events that their scores had to be posted. Personality, well anyhow, there's about 5. And she won every category. The categories had to be posted at that particular queen contest for the Miss High School, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And she won every one of those.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was talking to one of the judges about 3 weeks ago on the phone. She lives in Pine Top, or out of Pine Top, or out of Show, up in that area. I was talking to her on the phone, and she said, "Do you remember when you brought Terry down to that contest? She won every category." And I said, "Yeah, I remember now that you're talking about it. She won every category." I was so proud of her. And she won a beautiful leather saddle. And then she became Miss Prada del Sol, and she won another one as Miss Arizona. And so she's got 2 or 3 queen saddles.
Mm-hmm. That's great. It's good. A good legacy from her mom, sounds like.
Well, like I said, I never wanted to be called a ham, even though I trained my own horses and exercised. I even exercised some race horses at one time. But I always wanted to be feminine and be the lady of rodeo, and I think I earned that right, because I had a lot of people and a lot of rodeo announcers say, "She's the lady of rodeo."
So what does the term hand mean?
Yeah, where you handle horses, tough, which a lot of them want to be. But I was the other way around. I wanted to handle horses, but I wanted to be feminine and not so handy.
And I just hadn't heard that term before. It's a,
Yeah. Oh, she's really a hand. You know, or boy, he's a hand. He knows that. I handle that. He's a hand. But I never wanted to be that. I just wanted to be feminine and lady of rodeo. And I did have several announcers say she's a lady of rodeo.
that's good. So when you started, training, I guess, to do barrel racing, I think in 65, you were saying about 1965?
I started in 65, and I was winning real good in 67. In 66.
Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like to train for barrel racing? Yeah, what was it that you'd have to do to train to get ready to compete?
You put the 3 barrels up, and you can either go to the left or right. And I remember in our arena, I finally got my time from 18 something down to 16.2 one time. And there again, I'm on my way, and then my horse got crippled. But 17s were good times there. And it finally got in Phoenix in the Coliseum in the 16s. Now at the national finals, they're in the 13s, but it's a smaller arena. But the barrels have to be so far off of the sides and so far from the finish line and so far out that you can run those up there in 13 and 14s.
Describe for me what the challenge is in barrel racing. What are the challenges that you face to try to make yourself better?
I think it has to be a kind of a spirit inside of you. You know you can do it, and so you want to do it. And but I practice the barrels all the time in our arena, and then I'd ride out. So I'd have him in a different arena. I'd ride out to the Chandler Airport and work out in that arena.
So when you were working out in that arena, describe for me like a practice session at the arena there at the Chandler Airport. When you would come in, what would be some of the things that you would do to practice? Because describe this to me as if I don't know anything about barrel racing. I've never seen it before. I don't know what women do. I don't know what the horses do. Kind of describe for me kind of in detail as to how, what you would be doing to practice for that.
Well, you usually start them out. First of all, when you start using your horse, you have to warm them up, just like you have to do your own body. You have to warm them up, and you have to cool them out afterwards. But by the time I rode from my house to the Chandler Arena, they were warmed up. So you come in, make sure the gates are all closed, being inside, and in training, you start walking them to the barrels so they can get their feet in a perfect position, and then over to the second, and then down to the third. You walk them a few times, and then you lope them a few times, and then you run them. And that's the way you just start training. I gave riding lessons to some girls before, and that's what I had them do. I would have them just walk around down to the first barrel, and they got to get into their heads what they're there for, the horses. So, and then you just go from there, and then and if you've got a good horse, he's going to take you. If you got a bad horse, he's not.
So the trick is that you want to make your way around the barrels
and get their feet in position as you go around. But even that doesn't work every time. Sometimes they're going faster, sometimes they're going a little bit slower. They have to get their own footing. So all you can do is give them their head and then give them the cue when to turn, and they'll do it if they've had the good training.
And would you get deductions if you touch the barrel? I mean, you want to try to...
If you touch a barrel with a horse, it usually goes over. But if you can reach down and hold the barrel up. I've never done that. And I have knocked some barrels over, but I've never done that, tried to reach out and grab it. if it went over, it's gonna go over. But you know, every once in a while, a girl will hold it back up, but I never did really do that.
Okay. So that was your main event that you competed in, was the barrel racing?
Yes, and then we roped in our own arena a lot, and then I went to Bill Opens, and I went to Prescott to their ropings, and Tucson on River Road, we went to some of their barrel races and ropings. And then I ran the barrels in Denver one time, and that was kind of exciting, but cold. I don't know how any horse can come out of Arizona and run up there. It was freezing cold, and those barns, I mean to tell you, it was cold in there. But I had a good time. I didn't win, but I had a really good time running there. And then they had a drill team. Of course, I belonged to Quadrille de Mujeres for years. They had a drill team there that I will say was one step better than us. And nobody was any better than that drill team from Denver. They were young kids, and they'd jump off they'd get off the horse, and the one behind would run and jump up on the horse ahead of them. It just was perfect. And they had lights on them. They turned the lights out real low, and these lights would just be jumping on these horses. It was just fantastic. So I thought, well, I'm going to go behind there and meet the people that are responsible for this. So I went back and told them I belonged to a drill team and I'd like to ask a few questions. They were so friendly. They had women that sewed the uniforms. They had men that drove the trucks. The riders did not have to do anything but ride. The men fixed the lights on the kids when they rode, and everything was done for them. And I thought that was really neat, and how they had people that were the guys were the truck drivers, and they paid all this expense themselves just to be close to that team.
Mm-hmm.
And they were good. And then I thought that our team was the next best in the Southwest, or even in the United States.
Mm-hmm. So you were doing barrel racing, you said, for about 35 years?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a long time. That's a long career of barrel racing.
It was, and I tried to train so many horses, but there'll never be another one like my first horse, Lance Tomahawk.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
What are some of your biggest wins?
Tucson and Prescott.
At which rodeos were they?
And I placed in a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
But my biggest win was Tucson, and I can't remember the year. I probably got it in some of that stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Prescott.
Was that one of
And
the annual rodeo that they do in Prescott?
mhm. And then Kingman one year.
So has your circuit mostly been in Arizona, or have you gone throughout a certain region? Or
Arizona, and then I barrel raced in Salinas, California, and then Denver,
and you went to Las Vegas?
and Las Vegas lots of times.
Mm-hmm. And what's the competition or the rodeo in Las Vegas? Is that one that happens every year?
This was PRCA that they had up there, and then they had special events like this one was now the one where I won 6 against the top girls. They were all there, and I felt really good about that one. And then these others were called Pro-Ams.
It's like a pro-American?
It was a pro, and then they'd have some amateurs run with them.
Oh, okay.
And I was the pro for those.
Mm-hmm.
Just won at the Coliseum a few times at livestock shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you...
But after my one horse got down, I tell you, it was like losing a child or something. I don't know, it really affected me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Tell me,
But I'm not an animal lover that, if the horse didn't run, I wouldn't have been that crazy about him. I'll just say that.
Okay. And you said that you knew Bernice Dossey, or you kind of looked up to her?
I knew Bernice Dossey, yes. And I would look up at her. I just thought she was so neat, just a neat lady, and she trick rode. And I love that about her. In fact, I took trick riding lessons, and then on about the 6th or 7th lesson, I started getting sick. And that's when I found out I was pregnant. So that ended my trick riding lessons.
And tell me about, you said that, you told me that you were 27 years, you were with the Quadrille de Mujeres. How did you get involved with that drill team?
I was in Casa Grande, and they had performed, they were on their 2nd performance. And I saw them and I thought, I'd like to do that. So Shirley Hartman was the head of the Quadrille de Mujeres. We're still very, very good friends. And so I went out and talked to them, and they wanted to know about my horse. Well, I had my black horse then, and he was so good. And then after he got hurt, then I started using Don's horse, which was Horse of Arizona, for 1964, and that was Kathy Jo Jones. And she was a cutting horse, and then she won all kinds of roping contests and in the horse shows. And that's what she was a show horse. But I started out then on her, and everybody loved her. She was just built so beautiful. But then after my black horse got hurt, I had to start trying horses out with a drill team. Again, some of them were successful, some of them weren't. But I spent half my life my rodeo career, working with horses, trying to get them built up.
Did you
But
also?
I rode every day.
Did you start with the drill team also in 1965, or was it a different year?
No, I think I started with them, and I imagine it was 65, around 65.
Okay, so about that time. Okay.
I just went to a Casa Grande rodeo, and they were performing down here, and I think they only had 8 or 10 girls. But we usually performed, after I got in, we did it with 12 or 14.
Okay. One other thing that I wanted to ask you was about, we talked about this a little bit before the interview, but some of your memories about the tragedy with Carl Dossey. You can remember kind of what happened with that.
Yes, our neighbors, Stanley and Julia Knox, had their buggy, and I was there, but I wasn't right where the accident happened. And I remember waving to Julia and to Stanley and how happy they were. And then just less than a block, I think somebody popped a balloon or threw something out. And I know a girl that was right there when it happened, and that's Eunice Stevens. It used to be Eunice Wetton, the Wetton family from Chandler. And we were talking about that not too long ago, how sick that made Julia, and well, everybody felt bad when Carl died that night.
What did you see? What did you see happen?
The only thing I saw was a calamity going on down there, and I, figured if it's runaway horses or anything, let's get out of here. But when they passed, they were in their buggy and just so cute, and they were my neighbors. And I had seen them in the buggy before. They were wonderful people, just wonderful people. And I know how heartsick they were after that happened. And it was a tragedy in Chandler, but some dumb person, you know, there's always one of those around. That's another thing, when I train a horse, I train them with, so if somebody throws a popcorn box over the fence or balloon goes passing by, I want them to know about it. So I put mine in a lot of training and everything. And a lot of our horses, we could put a child on, or an adult, either one.
Mhm.
But you have to train them for that kind of stuff.
So, going back to the rodeo arena that was near the airport, like how important do you think that was to you, that having that arena right there?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was great. I loved it. And I rode out there almost every evening and would train on the barrels. That's what I went out there for, was the barrels. And they kept barrels in there. And so then I'd ride back home and I warmed him up coming out, and by the time I run there, and I mean, I really worked him out. Sometimes if he didn't do it right, I wouldn't leave till he did. And so we had lots of runs in there, but then by the time I got back home, he was all cooled out. I could just put him up.
Mm-hmm. And were there a lot of rodeo events there, as far as, people getting together and actually having the rodeos?
Yeah, we had several rodeos out there. In fact, when it rained one time, they brought the rodeo over to our house because we had an arena and our ground was good. Don had put a lot of sand in there. So it was a big roping. It wasn't really a rodeo, but it was a big roping. And so they called and Don told me to come on over. So we had this big roping. I mean, they were from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids got we didn't have restaurants in Chandler then. Like, where can we have lunch? That's what I said. You can have your ropings here, but I'm not going to be the cook shack.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I can't even remember if Bob's Big Boy was there. But there was no place to eat hardly at all, and what was there was shut down. So I remember my kids selling soda pop in the backyard to some of them, but there wasn't a lot of restaurants in Chandler at that time.
Mm-hmm. And just one last question for, kind of your rodeo career. What do you think what are you most proud of about your rodeo career that you've had?
Well, it's just that what I'm proud of is that I wanted to accomplish what I did, what I practiced, and I wanted to accomplish the winnings. And then I also learned in rodeo that you have to be a good loser. Not only just a good winner, but you've got to be a good loser. And I think that gives you a little light on life too.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I joined the Quadrille team, I went with them. We were in the Rose Bowl parade, and we did the Salinas Rodeo, and of course Tucson. That Shirley went to the university at Tucson, and she started the drill team. And so every year we went back to her hometown. And then finally it got where they were going to have us. We were just expected to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And Tucson's got the biggest arena of anywhere. And it was fun performing in that arena because it was so big.
Mm-hmm. What was your best barrel racing time?
Well, it depends on the ground conditions, and it depends on the size of the arena. But I remember running in Globe, and I ran, but I knocked the second barrel over, a 17.2. And for Globe, that was really good. And I remember the announcer, just as I stopped my horse, he said, well, she just knocked herself out of the money. And I had a fantastic time compared to the other girls, but I knocked the barrel over. And then in Tucson and Prescott, Tucson has a big arena, and I'd run, I think, an 18-1 or maybe 17-9, something along in there. And Las Vegas, I can't remember, it seemed like it was a 17-9 up there. But my horse was running, the black horse would run in the late 16s and in the early 17s. But anyhow, lost him, so.
He was a very skilled horse, it sounds like. So just, it's kind of our ending questions here. There's so much more that we could interview on, but I'll probably keep you here for another hour asking you questions. What do you think is most important to know or to remember about the history of the Chandler Airport? Because you've been around it for so long, connected to it for so long.
Well, there were just a lot of activities out there. We had the roping arena, we had the horse races, we had flying, we had the rod and gun club. We just had all kinds of family activities going on out there. It seemed like all the time. And then we had the Sheriff Posse of Chandler. We met out there a couple of nights a week. So Chandler Airport was just part of our family going. And Don roped, and he was out there a couple of nights a week, and so was I. And the kids went on with us all the time.
So
I think it was just the activities that they had going out there. And then how happy we were when Bob Copeland came in. And yet, riding down the ditch bank, I saw TE in Virginia. They came in and started Aero Aviation. Well, because I was there on my horse, I stopped and visited with them. And that's when I decided to have Donnie take his lessons, and then Johnny took his lessons. And they provided work for Johnny. He worked with TE, and he worked with Bob Copeland, and of course I was either out there in the car or on a horse or pickup or something all the time, because it was just part of our life.
How long did you practice out there?
Oh, I would practice in the evening, an hour or two.
And how many years did you practice out there?
Oh, I guess till they moved the arena.
Okay, so around maybe 10
I can't
years.
remember the date they moved it.
Was it? Do you think it was around 10 years or less than 10 years?
65, probably around that. 8 years maybe.
Okay. So
And,
you're.
but a lot of activity going on, and still it's activity for me. I go have lunch with my son, and sometimes I go to his hangar, and I go to the Toys for Tots party, and I like the walk-ups, and I like everybody I meet out there, and friends is what make your life wonderful, and I've got a lot of them.
Okay.
And then my son, every time we go anywhere, he knows everybody, both of them. They know everybody. So, just part of our life.
And from your perspective of having such a long connection with the airport, and then seeing how the airport is today and what it functions as today, what would you say would be the significance of the airport for Chandler now?
Oh, I'm just amazed. I'm just overwhelmed every time I go by there of the airplanes that's out there now. And I wonder how many more are we gonna put on there? Will it grow bigger, or what are we gonna do? And by the way, I used to stop and visit Mrs. Bergeson on my horse too. She lived right there on the canal bank. I loved her family.
They have a dairy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I
But
think-
you guys are new, so see, I've got 2 more friends now.
All right. Well, I think we're done. I sure appreciate your time.
Oh, well, you can take what pictures you want and whatever you need.
Okay.
And I think, let's see, I guess.
Do you think you covered everything you wanted to cover, at least for now, or is there anything else that you might want to add, do you think?
I guess that's probably it. Just how much fun I had. And then the history book, you saw that. My friend Donovan Nickel put that in the history book, which is a really nice honor to be in that with my rodeo. So now I took up golf.
Hey, you always gotta have something.
I played off and on for about 20 years, but then I started playing like 5 days a week, and so now they're playing golf right out my door. How about some more cookies and coffee?
Well, when we start cleaning up, yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Are you through
Gonna
with me
unplug-
then?
Yes. Everybody can
Oh, that's right. I'm
take a
sorry.
potty break, whatever.
And we can go ahead and,
Well, I probably goofed up, what do you go, my thoughts and my talking, but
I thought you sounded just fine.
you gotta remember, I'm an old lady now. Yeah, I love these cookies.
Did you want to check your phone? I know somebody called while we were.
You know, get it later. You know how to run a video?
Video cap,
Well, they gave me
VCR.
this new TV for Christmas,
Oh,
my
nice.
kids did. And I got a video and I'd like for you to see it.
Is it a VHS, the tape?
It's a tape.
Um,
Here's the thing that we're gonna sell this.
Stand by.